I overheard my dad tell my brother, "Don't worry, we'll make your sister pay." That same night, I moved every dollar out of reach. What they didn't realize was, here's the rephrased story, optimized for a narrated personal story video, focusing on emotional power, conversational tone, and maintaining a similar length. What if the people who are supposed to love you most, the ones who raised you, are actually plotting to ruin you? I thought I knew what betrayal felt like, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the night I heard my father tell my brother, "Don't worry, we'll make your sister pay for everything." My blood ran cold. My world shattered. But what they didn't know was, they wouldn't take a single penny from me. I grew up in a middle-class, suburban home in Pennsylvania. On the surface, we were the perfect American family. Modest house, manicured lawn, annual beach vacations. But behind those closed doors, a different, far more complicated reality churned. As the eldest, I was held to impossibly high standards. My parents expected straight A's, perfect behavior, and mature responsibility from day one. Bring home an A-. Why wasn't it an A+, my father would ask. Second place in the science fair? My mother wondered aloud why I hadn't worked harder for first. It was never enough. Then came James, my brother, 5 years younger than me. From the moment he arrived, it was blindingly clear he'd be treated differently. My room had plain furniture. James got a custom race car bed and expensive decals. I received practical clothes and books. James unwrapped the latest video games and gadgets. "Your brother is still little," my mother would explain. "Boys need more encouragement," my father would add, as if being a girl made me naturally resilient to neglect. By 10, I was doing dishes, laundry, keeping my room spotless. James, meanwhile, left trails of toys and wrappers without consequence. "Just pick up after him," my mother would sigh. "He's just being a boy." At 12, babysitting duties were added. I became the unpaid caretaker whenever my parents went out. "You're so mature for your age," they'd say, a phrase that felt more like a burden than a compliment. The Christmas I was 14 still stings. I'd spent months asking for a laptop for school, researching affordable options. On Christmas morning, I unwrapped a second-hand laptop that barely functioned. Hours later, James tore open a brand new gaming computer, 3 times what I'd asked for. "Your brother needs it for his games," my father explained. "Those games help with hand-eye coordination." My own educational needs? Unasked, I already knew the answer. At 16, I got my first job at a grocery store, working weekends and summers. Not by choice, but because I needed my own money. James received generous allowances just for existing. "It builds character," my father said, patting my shoulder, as if forcing me into early adulthood was a favor. High school brought more disparities. A school trip to Washington, D.C.? Use your savings, they told me. 6 months later, they paid twice that amount for James to attend a 2-week computer camp. "Your brother needs these opportunities for his future," my mother explained. My future, apparently, wasn't worth the same investment. This pattern was relentless. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone. James got celebrations and rewards. I got expectations and responsibilities. My achievements were met with nods, quickly dismissed. His mediocre accomplishments were celebrated with parties and expensive gifts. But the worst part wasn't the material differences, substantial as they were. It was the emotional investment they poured into James, leaving me to fend for myself. They cheered loudly at his soccer games, but missed my Honor Society induction due to something at work. They framed his participation certificates, while my academic awards collected dust. I watched James transform from a spoiled child into an entitled teenager. He expected things done for him, through tantrums and lacked empathy. By 18, he couldn't even do his own laundry. My parents just laughed it off, cuddling him. Meanwhile, I retreated, building walls around my heart, focusing on the one thing I could control, my future. I studied fiercely, joined every academic club, saved every dollar. "Why are you always so serious?" my mother would ask. "You'll miss these years." They never understood. I had already missed out on the family experience they'd freely given James. I wasn't their child in the same way. I was their responsibility, their helper, their backup plan, never their priority. By the time I graduated valedictorian, I'd accepted that my success would always be seen as expected, not exceptional. As I delivered my speech, I saw my parents nudging James to pay attention, not watching me with pride. That night, I made a silent, still cold promise. I would build a life so successful, so undeniably impressive, that even they would have to acknowledge my worth. Not for their approval, but to prove to myself I wasn't the afterthought they'd made me feel like for 18 years. Little did I know this decision would lead to the most painful betrayal of all, and ultimately to my freedom. The summer after graduation was a blur of grocery store shifts and college prep. I had a partial scholarship to a respected state university, covering 40% of my tuition. It was an achievement, but a significant financial gap remained. "We need to talk about college," my father said one evening, calling me into his office. My mother sat beside him, her expression unnervingly neutral. I knew this was coming. For years, they'd vaguely referenced helping with my education. They exchanged glances. My father cleared his throat. "We've reviewed our finances. We cannot contribute to your college expenses." The words hit like a physical blow, though I'd half expected them. What came next hurt more. "We need to save for James's education," my mother added softly. "Those computer science programs cost a fortune." James was 3 years from college, yet his education already took priority. "I understand," I said. Arguing was useless. Crying would only give them satisfaction. Instead, I took notes, asking practical questions about student loans, as if it were a business meeting, not another parental betrayal. That night, I revised my budget spreadsheet, applied for every scholarship, and 3 more part-time jobs. I knew I needed to work at least 20 hours weekly. By September, I had 2 jobs, 15 hours at the university library, weekends at a coffee shop. Between classes, work, and studying, I averaged 5 hours of sleep. My tiny dorm room, filled with secondhand finds, became my sanctuary, the first space truly mine. My roommate, Alyssa, worried constantly. "You can't keep this up for 4 years, she warned at 3 a.m. one night. "Watch me," I replied, not looking up. The exhaustion was real. I barely dragged myself out of bed, fell asleep on my laptop, caught every cold. But I never missed a class, never turned in late, never failed an exam. Most importantly, I never asked my parents for $1. Their calls were brief, focused solely on James's achievements. Varsity soccer, advanced computer science, a new MacBook Pro. "It cost a small fortune," my mother proudly shared, "but your father says it's an investment in his future." I thought of my own ancient, duct-taped laptop and said nothing. Sophomore year, I declared a finance major. Numbers made sense. Models didn't play favorites. There was a clarity, a fairness in finance I'd never experienced in my family life. I excelled, earning respect, mentorship, and internship recommendations. The summer after junior year, I landed a coveted internship at a New York City financial firm. It paid enough for a tiny sublet and some savings. My first taste of financial independence. It changed everything. My performance earned me a full-time offer upon graduation, with a salary that seemed astronomical. When I called my parents with the news, their response was predictably underwhelming. "That sounds nice, honey," my mother said. "Oh, before I forget, James got accepted to that computer science summer program at MIT. We're so proud of him." By the time I graduated summa cum laude, I had worked thousands of hours, taken out minimal student loans, and secured a position that would let me repay those loans within 2 years. At 22, I moved to New York. My tiny studio felt like a luxury. I could finally buy groceries without checking every price, treat myself to a coffee or a book. I opened multiple savings accounts for specific goals: emergency fund, loan repayment, down payment. My college frugality stuck. My hard work at the firm quickly paid off. I volunteered for challenging projects, worked longer hours, exceeded expectations. My first promotion came in 18 months, another year later. By 26, my student loans were paid in full. I had a 6-month emergency fund and was investing aggressively. At 27, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small, well-located 1-bedroom condo in Brooklyn. The day I signed those mortgage papers was perhaps the proudest moment of my life. A home, truly mine, bought with years of sacrifice and determination. Throughout these years, my relationship with my family remained distant but cordial. Calls on birthdays, appropriate gifts brief, awkward visits once or twice a year. always revolving around James. James did go to college, the same state university I attended, but with full financial support. He changed majors 3 times, took 5 years to graduate with a general business degree, then moved back home, ostensibly to figure out his next steps. At 28, he was still living at home, still supported. I, at 28, had built the independent life I'd promised myself. Financial security, career success, a home, loyal friends, my chosen family. I had proven I could thrive without the support so freely given to my brother. And then came that fateful weekend, visit home. My mother's 55th birthday. Part obligation, part 8 months since my last visit. I arrived Friday evening with an expensive handbag she'd hinted about. My father greeted me with a distant side hug, then returned to baseball. "Samantha, you finally made it," my mother said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "James has been here since Thursday." Of course he had. James, now 23, emerged from the kitchen, beer in hand, unchanged. His designer clothes and new smartwatch suggested no financial struggles despite no steady job. "The corporate drone returns," he smirked. "Busy but good," I replied neutrally. Sharing success with them only led to uncomfortable silences. Dinner was a familiar cycle of discussing James's meager achievements. He'd applied for tech jobs, being selective. Soccer league, a $12,000 coding boot camp my parents thought was a worthwhile investment. I took another bite of lasagna, a bitter thought. They balked at a fraction of that for my college. After dinner, James disappeared to a bar. I helped my mother clean. Small talk about friends, garden club, renovations. Acquaintances, not mother and daughter. "We'll celebrate properly tomorrow," she said. "Giovanni's at 6. The most expensive restaurant in town." I knew I'd be expected to contribute, significantly. By 10:30, the house was quiet. My parents retired. I was in my childhood room, now a generic guest room. James hadn't returned. Unable to sleep, I went downstairs for water, avoiding the creaky 3rd step. As I neared the kitchen, I heard the front door open, then hushed voices. James was back, talking to my father. I froze, hidden in the hallway shadows. "Samantha doesn't need to know," my father said, low and clear. "This stays between us." I should have walked away. Part of me knew whatever I heard would change everything. But I stayed rooted. "How bad is it?" my father asked. James sighed. "About 40,000 now. The online poker sites, the credit cards. It all added up." My breath caught. $40,000 in debt? While living rent-free. "Christ, James," my father muttered. "Your mother can't know the full amount. She thinks it's half that." I know," James whined, that childhood tone I knew so well. "I messed up, Dad, but I've learned my lesson. I swear." A long pause. Then my father spoke, and the words utterly demolished me. "Listen, don't worry. We'll make your sister pay for everything." The words hit like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. "Samantha?" James asked, confused but not opposed. "How?" "She has that fancy job, that condo. She has money," my father continued, chillingly calculating. "And she owes this family after all we've done for her." All they had done for me, my mind reeled. "We'll tell her we want to start a family business," my father explained, his voice confident. "Something about investing in property, a franchise. Something legitimate enough she'll want to be part of it." "You think she'll just give us $40,000? James sounded skeptical. "Not give. Invest," my father corrected, a sneer in his tone. "We'll have her take out a loan in her name. With her credit score, she'll easily qualify. Promise her returns, partnership, whatever it takes." I felt physically ill. They were planning to defraud me, saddle me with debt, to bail James out of his gambling addiction. "What if she asks for business plans?" James asked. My father chuckled. "You know your sister, always so desperate for family approval. We'll tell her this is her chance to finally be part of something important with the family. That emotional angle will cloud her judgment." Then, footsteps on the stairs. My mother. "What are you two discussing so late?" she asked, her tone suggesting she already knew. "Just talking through the plan for Samantha," my father replied. "Oh," my mother said, her voice dropping. "Has James told you about the additional credit card?" Yes, my father sighed. $40,000 total. My mother sighed. Well, Samantha has an obligation to help her brother. Family helps family. She's done well for herself, and it's time she contributed back. Exactly. James agreed, suddenly animated. She's always going on about her job and her condo. She can afford it. She'll be here all weekend, my father said. I'll bring up the business idea tomorrow after dinner. Plant the seed. We can work on her over the next few months. Have her sign the loan papers by summer. She always wants to feel included. James added, with a laugh that made my skin crawl. She'll probably jump at the chance to finally be part of the family business. I had heard enough. Moving as silently as possible, a ghost in my own home, I retreated back to the guest room. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, as the full impact washed over me. My family plotting to use me. So casually, so confidently, as if my exploitation was their right. I thought of all my sacrifices. They planned to take it all away with one manipulative scheme. In that moment, something broke inside me. The last lingering hope that they might someday see my worth, treat me with care, vanished. I knew with absolute certainty what I needed to do. I didn't sleep. My mind was strangely calm, operating with crisis-driven clarity. The shock and hurt were there, but I pushed them aside to focus on protecting myself. I reviewed my finances. Savings substantial but spread. Investments good, but penalties for early liquidation. Condo had equity, but refinancing meant complications. Everything needed to be secure, inaccessible to them. Then the personal aspect. The finality of cutting ties. Was I prepared? I thought about my childhood, the favoritism, dismissed achievements, constant expectation to fend for myself. James getting everything. College, working myself to exhaustion while they funded James. All the holidays, my practical gifts versus his exact wishes. And now the ultimate betrayal, using my desire for family connection to saddle me with his debt. Yes, I was prepared. I had already been alone in all the ways that mattered. I quietly gathered my belongings, repacked my suitcase. I left my mother's birthday gift on the dresser. I wouldn't take back a gift once given. On a hotel notepad I wrote, had an emergency at work. Had to return to New York immediately. Happy birthday, Mom. No apology, no elaboration. They'd assume I left in the morning, giving me hours. I waited. At 2:30 a.m., James returned. By 3, the house was silent. I picked up my suitcase, slipped out, avoiding the creaky step. In the entryway, I paused, looking back at the darkened house that was never truly a home. This would be the last time. No sadness, just a sense of long overdue liberation. I slipped out, closing the door gently. My rental car was in the driveway. I silently thanked my earlier self for choosing it. The night was cool and clear as I drove away from my childhood home for the final time. I didn't look back. I checked into an airport hotel, then executed the next phase of my plan. I logged into my primary bank account, transferred most of the balance to a secondary unknown account, leaving just enough to avoid fees. I called my credit card customer service, reporting potential fraud, requesting a freeze and a replacement card to my New York address. I emailed my financial advisor for an urgent video call, vague about reasons, but emphasizing urgency. I then emailed my boss, requesting emergency, personal days. I had ample vacation. Finally, I searched for a New York attorney specializing in financial security and identity protection, found a highly rated firm, and sent a detailed inquiry. By morning, light filtered through the curtains. Exhausted, but wired, I ordered room service, watching the sunrise, contemplating the new reality I'd created overnight. My phone buzzed around 9 a.m. Texts from my mother, then calls from her and my father. I silenced them, deleted the messages. Around 11 a.m., I checked out, headed to the airport. I'd changed my flight to the earliest available. At the gate, I finally allowed myself to process. The hurt was profound, a physical ache in my chest. Not for losing something I had, but for realizing I never had it to begin with. My family had never seen me as someone to love and protect, only as a resource to exploit. I boarded my flight with a strange mix of grief and determination. By the time I landed, I had made peace. I would protect myself because no one else ever had. As I unlocked my condo door that evening, I felt a profound sense of homecoming. This space, bought with my own hard-earned money, represented everything I'd built. I dropped my suitcase, walked through the rooms, touching furniture that was truly mine. Then I opened all the windows, letting the cool evening air sweep through, symbolically clearing out the last vestiges of their toxic influence. Tomorrow would bring challenges, meetings, security measures, a new life to build. But tonight, in the safety of my home, I allowed myself to feel everything. I cried for the little girl who was never enough, for the teenager who worked to exhaustion, trying to earn love, for the young woman who found success, only to have her family view it as exploitation. And then, as the tears subsided, something unexpected, relief. The constant effort of seeking approval from people incapable of giving it had been exhausting. Now that I knew the truth, I could finally stop trying. That night, I slept more soundly than in years, my subconscious recognizing I'd freed myself from a lifetime of emotional debt. Sunday morning brought 27 missed calls, 43 texts. I deleted them. My father's emails, subject lines growing urgent, also deleted. I needed clarity. By noon, I'd spoken with my financial advisor. Alarmed, she recommended additional security, verbal passwords, removing parents as emergency contacts, and a credit freeze. Family financial exploitation accounts for billions in losses each year, she said. You were right to act quickly. The attorney I contacted agreed to a video consultation. For 90 minutes, she outlined a comprehensive strategy to protect my assets and establish legal boundaries. Document everything, she advised. Record conversations if legal. The more evidence, the better. She recommended filing reports with financial institutions and credit bureaus. By Sunday evening, I'd implemented most recommendations, feeling more secure. But I knew the emotional confrontations lay ahead. Monday, I took a personal day, continued securing finances, transferred investment accounts, changed all passwords, set up two-factor authentication. I updated my will, removing family members as beneficiaries, designating charities. At noon, James texted, "Mom is really upset. What the hell is wrong with you?" No response. By Monday evening, calls escalated to extended family. Aunt Linda left a voicemail, concerned about my selfish behavior. My mother's brother wondered why I was abandoning the family. Cousins I barely knew had strong opinions. My parents had wasted no time spreading their version. Ungrateful daughter refuses to help brother, cuts off loving family. At first I tried to explain, but minds were made up. Family loyalty ran deep. After a week of draining, circular conversations, I took a different approach. I drafted a detailed email. Facts of my childhood, self-funded education, the overheard conversation. No embellishment. The truth was damning enough. I sent it only to family I truly cared about. Grandma Rose, Cousin Rachel, Uncle David. I don't expect you to take sides, I wrote, only to consider there might be more. I have removed myself from a harmful situation, and I hope you can respect that. The responses surprised me. Grandma Rose called, her voice shaking. I always saw how they treated you differently, she admitted. I should have been more persistent. Rachel replied, I believe you, sharing her own observations of their favoritism. Uncle David's response was the most unexpected. Over lunch, he revealed he'd recently cut contact with my mother for similar reasons. Your mother and father always had a blind spot when it comes to James, he said. You did the right thing. These small validations were healing bright spots. The finality of the break brought grief, not for what I lost, but for what I never had, parents who protected, celebrated, rather than exploited me. At work, I buried myself in new projects. My boss noticed my dedication, mistook it for ambition. Whatever has lit this fire under you, I'm all for it, he said. Your performance has been exceptional. The praise felt good, a reminder that hard work and integrity were recognized here, unlike at home. I consciously strengthened friendships, allowing myself to be more vulnerable. Lisa, my closest friend, had always sensed something complicated. I always thought it was strange how little you talked about them, she said when I shared the full story. Now I understand why. 3 months after the confrontation, I knew I needed a complete change. My company had an opening in San Francisco, a lateral shift, but the opportunity to build a life thousands of miles from my past was too appealing. When my transfer was approved, I sold my condo and relocated. Sorting through belongings became a metaphor. Old family mementos went into a box, stored, no longer displayed. San Francisco offered a fresh start. I found a bright apartment, joined a hiking club, prioritized professional growth and personal well-being. I found a support group for adults from dysfunctional families. The first meeting was uncomfortable, admitting aloud that those who should have loved me most had seen me as a resource. But as others shared, I recognized patterns. The relief of being truly understood was profound. Through the group, I met Aiden, whose parents had remortgaged his house in his name without knowledge, and Taylor, whose mother had turned family against her for not funding her extravagant lifestyle. Their stories, different in details, were similar in essence. Love as transactional, care as conditional. The hardest part, Taylor said, is accepting they will never be the parents you needed. That no matter how successful you become, they will never see you clearly or love you properly. Her words resonated. I had spent decades trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Accepting this would never happen was both devastating and liberating. Around the 6-month mark in San Francisco, an email from my cousin Michael. James filed for bankruptcy last week. Your parents have been telling everyone they had to cash out their retirement accounts to help him. I felt a complex mix of vindication, sadness for my parents, and a small, petty satisfaction, but mostly gratitude. Grateful I'd overheard that conversation. Grateful I'd acted quickly. Grateful I'd found the courage to break free. 1 year after moving, I was promoted to team leader. My apartment became a home. I made real friends, people who valued me for who I was. On quiet evenings, I sometimes thought of my family, but with detached curiosity. They shaped my early life, but no longer defined my future. I had built something precious, a life entirely my own, free from exploitation. It came at a high cost, but watching the sun set over the bay, I knew it had been worth it. 3 years passed. My life in San Francisco developed its own rhythm. I was promoted again. My apartment was home, filled with memories. I dated cautiously. My therapist helped me recognize how my family experiences shaped my attachment patterns, my tendency to give too much. Slowly, I learned healthier boundaries, recognized my worth, expected reciprocity. Volunteer work became fulfilling. I taught financial literacy to young women. You explained this stuff like someone who had to learn it the hard way, a participant told me. I did, I replied simply. Contact with my family remained minimal. Grandma, Rachel, Uncle David were my anchors. Of my parents and James, I heard news only through them. My father took a second job. My mother sold her jewelry. James moved to Florida after bankruptcy. I felt no pleasure in their struggles, but no responsibility. My boundaries remained firm. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, an email. JamesWilson@mail.com. Subject, long overdue. My brother. I hadn't blocked his new email. For several minutes, I stared, debating. Finally, I clicked. Samantha, I know you probably have no reason or desire to hear from me. I've been in therapy for the past year, dealing with my gambling addiction and the financial disaster I created. You are at the top of that list. What I tried to do to you was inexcusable. I was spoiled, entitled, and completely oblivious to my own privilege. I am finally living the reality you dealt with your entire life. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I simply wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I participated in, and I am genuinely sorry. James. I read it 3 times, searching for manipulation. Finding none, I closed my laptop. The message churned in my mind all day. That evening, I called my therapist. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks responding reopens a door I closed for good reason. The other part wonders if people can truly change. Both are valid perspectives, she said. No right answer, only what feels right to you. You don't have to decide immediately. I took her advice. For 2 weeks, I sat with the email, discussing it in therapy and with trusted friends. Finally, I composed a brief reply. James, thank you for your email. I appreciate the apology and am glad to hear you are working on yourself. I need time to consider what, if any, relationship I might want to have with you in the future. Please respect that boundary. Samantha. His response came within hours. I completely understand. Take all the time you need. I'm grateful you responded at all. 3 months later, after more therapy, I agreed to a video call. The conversation was awkward but civil. James looked different, the smirk replaced by a more thoughtful expression. He told me about his recovery, his modest job, his struggle for financial independence. I shared limited information about my life. We didn't discuss our parents much, though he mentioned their struggles. They still don't fully understand what they did wrong, he admitted. They see themselves as victims. I nodded, unsurprised. Some people never develop that self-awareness. At the end of the call, we agreed to proceed cautiously. Monthly emails, maybe another call in a few months. No promises, no expectations. Just a tentative opening. I didn't know if this reconnection would lead anywhere meaningful. But I had learned enough about myself to know I could establish boundaries and walk away again if necessary. The greatest lesson from this journey wasn't just about family betrayal or financial protection. It was about creating my own definition of family, surrounding myself with people who valued me for who I was. I learned that sometimes walking away from toxic relationships, even blood, is the only path to peace. Forgiveness, when it comes, is for your own healing, not the other person's absolution. Establishing firm boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Most importantly, my worth was never dependent on my family's recognition. The financial security, the career, the home, the relationships, all testament to my strength and resilience. Sometimes, losing a family that was never truly yours is the only way to find the peace you deserve. And sometimes, protecting yourself financially is the first step toward protecting yourself emotionally. As I finished that video call with James and closed my laptop, I felt neither elation nor dread. Just a quiet certainty that whatever happened next, I would be okay. I had protected myself when no one else would. I had built a life worth living on my own terms, and that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. **** video outro / call to action ****. Have you ever had to protect yourself from the people who should have been protecting you? How did you find the strength to establish boundaries and move forward? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself, even from family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the family we are born into.